You are reading? Okay, we are starting Act 1, Scene 1 of The Diary of Anne Frank. So I'll do the background and explain a little bit, and then we'll need your parts. So on page 535, Scene 1. The scene remains the same throughout the play. It is the top floor of a warehouse, an office building in Amsterdam, Holland. The sharply peaked roof of the building is outlined against a sea of other rooftops stretching away into the distance. Nearby is the belfry of a church tower. Belfry would be where the bell is in a church tower, the high peak. It's the name of that church tower is the Westertoren, whose carillon rings out the hours, whose bell. Carillon are a set of bells. Occasionally faint sounds float up from below, the voices of children playing in the street, the tramp of marching feet, a boat whistle from the canal. The 3 rooms of the top floor and a small attic space above are exposed to our view. The largest of the rooms is in the center with 2 small rooms slightly raised, so a few steps up, on either side. On the right is a bathroom out of sight, and they call their bathroom a water closet. A narrow, steep flight of stairs at the back leads up to the attic. The rooms are sparsely furnished, so not a lot of stuff. With a few chairs, cots, a table or 2. The windows are painted over, so they're blacked out so nobody sees the light, or covered with makeshift blackout curtains. In the main room, there is a sink, a gas ring for cooking, so there's stove, and a wood-burning stove for warmth. They don't have the kind of heat like we just go to a button and press it and our heat kicks on. The room on the left is hardly more than a closet, so it's really small. There is a skylight in the sloping ceiling. Directly under this room is a small, steep stairwell with steps leading down to a door. This is the only entrance from the building below. When the door is opened, we see that it has been concealed or hidden on the other side by a bookcase attached to it. The curtain rises to an empty stage. It is late afternoon, November 1945. So this is a scene that happens after Anne's death. Okay, this is after. And then when we go into scene 2, it'll be more of a flashback. Okay, again, if you turn to page 536, I'll continue. You want to look at that virtual tour because you could see the staircase. You could see this bookcase that covered the staircase. You can see what these rooms look like. Okay, and there's different things in our textbook, but to go on that virtual tour, you'll get it a whole lot more. Okay, page 536 is showing you an aerial view of some of the bombers, the German planes that were bombing different places. So they could hear those things in the distance too. Okay, the rooms are dusty, the curtains in rags. Chairs and tables are overturned, so there's been a fight. The door at the foot of the small stairwell swings open. Mr. Frank comes up the stairs into view. He is a gentle, cultured European in his middle years, so he's middle-aged. There is still a trace of a German accent in his speech. So he doesn't live in Germany anymore because they had moved, but you could still hear that he had some German background. He stands looking around, making a supreme effort at self-control. He is weak, ill. His clothes are threadbare. This is him having survived being in a concentration camp. Okay, that's why he's weak and ill, because it's going to take him a while to recover from, losing so much weight from being starved and worked. His clothes are threadbare. He's not wearing super fancy clothes right now. After a second, he dumps his rucksack on the couch, so his bag, and he moves slowly about. He opens the door to one of the smaller rooms and then abruptly closes it again, turning away. So we can see that he's being emotional, because this is after, he knows that he's the only one that survived. All the rest of his family and everybody that's going to be in this play is going to pass away, all of the Jewish people that are in this play. He goes to the window at the back, looking off at the Westertoren, so at the church, as its carillon strikes the hour of 6. So it's 6 o'clock at night when this starts. Then he moves restlessly on. From the street below, we hear the sound of a barrel organ, so someone playing music, and children's voices at play. There is a many-colored scarf hanging from a nail. So that's important because it's going to come up in the play later. Mr. Frank takes it, putting it around his neck. As he starts back for his bag, his eye is caught by something lying on the floor. It's a woman's white glove. He holds it in his hand, and suddenly all of his self-control is gone. He breaks down crying. And we can infer that that was probably something that belonged to his wife. Because back when I was little, if we got dressed up, I don't know if that happened for any of you, but when I was little, we would have gloves for Easter, and my grandmother would make sure I had them. We hear footsteps at the stairs. Miep, guys, comes up looking for Mr. Frank. Miep is a Dutch girl of about 22. She wears a coat and hat ready to go home. She is pregnant. Her attitude toward Mr. Frank is protective, compassionate. So Miep is one of the people that was German who would have lost her life had they caught her trying to help smuggle food and anything that the Franks needed. All right, page 537. Miep.
Are you right, Mr. Frank?
Just a little louder, please, Chris.
Everyone obviously come home. It's after 6. Don't see up here, Mr. Frank. What's the use of torturing yourself like this?
I come to say goodbye. I'm leaving for you.
What do you mean? Where are you going? Where?
I don't know yet. I haven't decided.
Mr. Frank, you can't leave here. This is your home.
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam is your home. Your business is here, waiting for you. You're needed here. Now that the war is over, there are things that
I can't stay in Amsterdam, mate. There's too many memories for me. Everywhere there's something. The house we live in, the school, the street organ played out there. I'm not the person you used to know, mate. I'm a bitter old man. Forgive me. I shouldn't be speaking to you like this. They're all that you're dead for us.
no, it wasn't suffering. You can't say we suffered.
As she speaks, she straightens a chair which is overturned.
I know what you went through. You know, you and yesterday.
Crowler.
Rather, I remember it as I'm not to live.
He gives one last look around. He starts for the steps, so he starts to leave, and then he remembers his rucksack, his bag, and he goes back for it. And Miep hurries to a cupboard, a cabinet in the kitchen.
Mr. Frank, did you see? There are some of your papers here.
She brings a bundle of papers to him.
We found them in a heap of rubbish on the floor after you left.
And that after you left is, obviously we know there was a fight and when they were discovered. So they found these things left. Okay, Mr. Frank.
Brenda,
He opens his rucksack to put the glove in it.
But Mr. Frank, there are letters, notes.
Brenda, all of them.
Bring this.
She hands him a paper-bound notebook. So it's Anne's diary. It's hardcover, diary, kind of like our journals. And then, because he's saying burn everything, because all these memories are painful. He's lost his whole family. He's lost his wife, his 2 daughters, all the people that stayed with him. He's lost his, he's alive, but his life is very much different. So at first he's like, burn everything, because he can't bear the remembering. But then when the diary is handed to him, you're going to see him change a little bit. And quietly he says, he opens the diary and begins to read.
Monday the 6th of July, 1922.
Okay, so the play starts, this scene starts taking place in 1945. So this is 3 years earlier, or a little over 2 years earlier. This is her first entry, the 6th of July. I don't have my book at home. I looked to see if I still had a copy at home, and I don't. So I'm going to have to go by the play until I get a copy digitally from the library. I can't even go to the library either. Okay, so is it possible? All right, to me, go ahead.
Is it possible? Only 3 years ago.
As he continues his reading, he sits down on the couch. So he's reading her diary out loud.
Dear Diary, since you and I are going to be great friends, I will start by telling you about myself. My name is Anne Frank. I'm 13 years old. I was born in Germany the 12th of June, 1929. As my family is Jewish, we immigrated to Holland when I came to Prague.
So what Chris is reading, that Mr. Frank is reading, this is what we saw in that entry that we read yesterday. So this is the beginning, and it's been modified a little bit, but gets the same gist. Mr. Frank reads on. Another voice joins his, as if coming from the air. It's Anne's voice. So Mr. Frank and Anne. So Mr. Frank is reading it out loud, but as he's reading it out loud, he's remembering Anne's voice. Because Anne is dead. But he's reading this, and you've seen that in movies where you'll hear somebody's voiceover come through when they're reading a letter or something. That's what's happening here. So Mr. Frank and Anne, do the best you can reading this together. That'd be Chris and Valerie. Okay, so again, we read that yesterday in the entry. Thank you. And the capitulation is when the Dutch, kind of surrendered and the Nazis took over. Okay, Mr. Frank's voice dies out, so he's still reading, but then we hear Anne's voice in a voiceover. And this will happen again later on in the play. The light dims slowly to darkness. The curtain falls on the scene. So this is all you would hear if you were watching this play, which this play is produced often. When I was teaching at the college where my husband works, I literally took this flyer for the Diary of Anne Frank. So it's produced. It's one of the most widely published, multi-language, all languages kind of book, because it's just a classic that's important that we read. All right, Valerie, this is Anne's voice. This is all you would hear if you were in a theater.
You cannot do this, and you cannot do that. They forced father out of his business. We had to wear yellow stars. I had a plan for rape. I couldn't go to my Dutch school anymore. I couldn't go to the movies, or ride in an automobile, or even a streetcar, and a million other things. But somehow we chose to have fun. But then father called me in the morning, and where he went to sing. At 5 o'clock this morning, mother woke me up and told me to hurry and get dressed. I was too, put on as many clothes as I could, yet the look suspicious. Walking along trying some cases. It wasn't as if we were on our way to learn we were going. Our hiding place in the city of Press in the where father used to have his business. 3 other people were coming with the man dads and their son here. Father knew the man dads, but we had never met them.
And during the last line, the curtain rises on the scene, the lights dim on, Anne's voice fades out. So tomorrow we'll start scene 2. I don't think we'll finish it, but if you look at the picture on the bottom, page 539, that is Anne Frank's family. Anne Frank is kind of in the middle. Otto Frank is the tall man. Anne is right next to him. This is her family right there, real picture. Okay. So when Anne talks about they knew the night before they were going to go into hiding, and they were going to make it look like they kind of ran away and went to another country, but that's not what they did. They went to hide in this annex, this part of the building that they had kind of converted into an apartment and would be hidden behind one bookcase. She had to get dressed and put on layer after layer after layer of clothing, because if you're walking around with a suitcase, someone's going to know you're going someplace. So we're going to hear about that in scene 2. So the very first scene is a flashback, and the very last scene, is present day, and the very last scene will be present day. Everything in the middle will be what happens that's been made into a play. Okay? So they did a pretty good job covering everything in the book. So at this point in time, I'm going to stop my video. Hopefully I can hear